Asia is the largest continent on Earth, spanning over 17.2 million square miles and home to over 4.6 billion people as of May 2021. Asia comprises of about 30% of Earth's total land areas. Asia is comprised of 48 countries, and most of the countries among them are poor due to institutional weakness, corruption, poor infrastructure, a lack of human capital, and overpopulation. Number 10. India. Starting our list, India is the 10th poorest country in Asia. The economy of India is characterized as a middle-income developing market economy and is considered as the 12th largest exporter in the world. India is the world's largest manufacturer of generic drugs, and its pharmaceutical sector fulfills over 50% of the global demand for vaccines. India is leading in the telecommunication, automobile, and e-commerce industries, and many more. Despite having all these figures and the sixth largest economy globally in terms of GDP, about 28% of India's population, that is, nearly 276 million people, live below the poverty line. Main reasons for this poverty in India includes low literacy rate, malnutrition, poor public health, gender discrimination, extreme income inequality, and the increasing population. Number 9. Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a country in South Asia which is the 8th most populous country in the world. As per new information, Bangladesh has one of the most growing economies, which gives middle-income economy status. But still, it is the poorest country list as per GDP per capita due to overpopulation, lots of natural causes such as floods, droughts, lack of resources, low demand for the country's exports, or historic exploitation. 80% of the economy depends on textile industry, and it is the second largest in the world, secondly only to China. Number 8. Kyrgyzstan. With a GDP of 5,323 international dollars, Kyrgyzstan is the 8th poorest country in Asia. The major factors for the poverty in Kyrgyzstan are its dependence on agriculture and the gaps in knowledge and resources among its people. Kyrgyzstan also relies on Russian remittances. Cotton and tobacco are some of the most exported products. Additionally, there is a lack of banking and financial services in the country, preventing people from investing and hindering economic growth. Number 7. Pakistan. Pakistan is in the 7th position in this list despite the country being very rich in natural resources. This is because of several reasons, including corruption and elitism in Pakistani government, religious and secular conflict, and the lack of democratic ideals. The country also spends the largest part of its national expenditures on defense, and as a result only spends 2.6% of its total GDP on education. This has caused about half of the country's population to be uneducated, and 40% of Pakistan's population lives in extreme poverty. Cotton, textile, and apparel production contributes most to this country's GDP and employs 25.8% of the population. Number 6. Cambodia. Cambodia has very few human resources and widespread income inequality, which leads to the 6th poorest country in Asia. Despite recent economic achievements, the country struggles with poverty, and the government has done little to build the necessary infrastructure required to lift millions of its people out of poverty. Tourism, mostly to Angkor Wat, the largest religious monument in the world, makes up a substantial fraction of Cambodia's GDP. Additionally, the textile industry accounts for 80% of the country's exports and employs a big part of the labor force. Number 5. Myanmar. Myanmar is Asia's 5th poorest country located in Southeast Asia. The main factors contributing to slow economic growth are poor government planning, internal unrest and lack of foreign investment, a large trade deficit, and inadequate infrastructure and know-how to take advantage of the country's natural resources. The agricultural sector contributes to nearly half of the national GDP, and approximately two-thirds of the population work in this sector. Natural gas and garments are the main products that Myanmar exports. About 24.8% of the population lives in poverty, and poverty is twice as high in rural areas, where about 70% of the population lives. Number 4. Nepal. Nepal, located in the South Asia, is in the 4th position of our list. Mainly Nepal poverty is due to political instability and corruption, a lack of industry, and its dependence on agriculture. Despite being rich in natural resources, Nepal has not utilized and capitalized on its resources by selling it to other countries. Over 50% of Nepal's gross domestic product or GDP comes from its service sector. Agriculture contributes to the second largest amount, while 13% comes from the industrial sector. The majority of Nepal's population lives in rural areas and are dependent on agriculture for their livelihood. Number 3. Tajikistan. Tajikistan is the 3rd poorest nation in Asia. A lack of infrastructure and civil war stagnates Tajikistan's economy, leaving Tajikistan with one of the world's largest remittance economies. Tajikistan has a population of around 9 million, and 31.3% of them live below the national poverty line. The unemployment rate is 10.9%. Around 40% of the country's GDP comes from immigrant remittances. Tajikistan exports aluminium, gold, zinc, lead, and cotton, and hydropower production is one of the major contributors to the economy of this landlocked former Soviet republic. Number 2. Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a landlocked country at the crossroads of Central and South Asia. Despite having a 1 trillion or more in mineral deposits, it remains one of the world's least developed countries. Agricultural production and mining are the backbone of Afghanistan's economy, which gives more than 44% of the whole economy. In Afghanistan, 47.3% of the population lives below the national poverty line in 2020. Afghanistan's economy is shaped by fragility and aid dependence. Number 1. Yemen. Located on the south coast of the Arabian Peninsula, this war-torn state tops the poorest countries list. The country has a population of close to 30 million people. Nearly half of them live below the national poverty line. Due to the civil war, more and more Yemen residents are falling below the poverty line. About 79% of the population lives under the poverty line, and 65% classify as extremely poor. The unemployment rate is 12.9% according to the data from the World Bank. Yemen mostly exports crude oil, natural gas, coffee, and fish. Even though most of the GDP comes from oil refining, Yemen is still not part of the Organization of Petroleum Export Countries, or OPEC.